There's opportunity to do more events there. And once I can do this, so there's no
Alright, mine will get to go. Sorry. You've not got enough sockets on the table? That was plugged in over there, wasn't it? There's one down here. No, there's some sockets down here. Well, who plugged that in over there then? I think we've got some spares down here. Use it over there. Alright.
Where's the man?
space for installation that don't have any audio, they be on the side. They need audio, then we'll have to kind of like moving around the room, so that's all. So there's like support for like maybe half an hour or longer.
Help. Ah, that's better. Ooh. Stop the button. 1 second. Hello? Ah! I'm getting the feedback actually, that's good. That might hold. Can everyone hear me back there?
Yeah.
Alright, cool. We're all good to go?
Yeah,
Alright. So, this mic sounds a little bit, no, it doesn't really work, so it's just going to have to, I'll just go on my knees, it'll be alright. There we go. Oh, that way. Hello everyone, my name's Richard, and I work for Projection Artworks, and I primarily work with a piece of software called TouchDesigner. So I'm just here today to kind of talk through what TouchDesigner is, give a couple of examples as to who's used it and what they've done with it. And then I'll go through and kind of just make something quite quickly to kind of show you guys how it all works. So I'll start off with a little rubbishy presentation. So this is I work for Projection Artworks. This is our work. So these are all jobs that have been done in TouchDesigner. So we have this Heineken World Cup launch, which is like a VJ set all around Somerset House. That was done with TouchDesigner going into D3. So D3 did the projection mapping, and TouchDesigner did all the real-time content. We have a here we have a kind of, this is a Nissan. It's like a car simulator basically, and you drive a real car on a rolling road. So you can build kind of really. You don't have to just do VJing in this software. You can do quite a lot of other interesting things. And then we have a projection mapping. We mainly do projection mapping. A projection mapping shown here, and another VJ set which is on a water fountain. So that's Projection Artworks. Other people who've used TouchDesigner, probably the most famous TouchDesigner project would be, oh no, I've lost it, there it is, V2 Labs. So Eamon Tobin, Ice Sound Show was all built within TouchDesigner. They also did Skrillex's Mothership tour. And this is quite a cool example of, they did a big StarCraft kind of BlizzCon thing, which was like a games sort of convention. And that had all real-time sort of visuals and content, and they would bring in video in, and that was all built in Touch as well. And the third and final example I have is Obscura Digital, who were a big company who do this massive projection mapping, which is on the Sydney Opera House. And that was, they had kind of visuals inside and outside, and that was all in real time, kind of lots of real time sort of audio reactive elements as well. And they've done these other couple of jobs here, but these aren't really so relevant to VJing so much. So that was actually built in TouchDesigner, so this is actually just a network. I'm just going to close it out and go to a new version. So this is TouchDesigner. You can see that it's node-based, and there's not much of an interface. It's just basically, we have this palette thing, which we can, to be honest, we can just get rid of that because it's just examples. And then all we have is basically this viewer, which I can move around, and a few nodes here, and they kind of make a little visual of this flower, which is kind of a, you know, a sort of sample project. But I'm going to go out and delete all that out because it's not really VJ content as such. So TouchDesigner, because it's node-based, it means that you can just go in and you can go back in time and change things around. Most people here probably tried out node-based stuff once or twice before, maybe? I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of similar to 4V or Max MSP, for example, for, you know, the audio source side of things. So if you double-click, you get this kind of sort of dialogue where you can create all these different types of nodes. And the first one I'm going to explain is kind of it's texture operators, which they're like a sort of movie files, kind of like if you were doing traditional VJing, you bring in sort of movie files and kind of, you know, match them to beat match them and do things like that. So this is all about textures, basically. So you can bring in a movie file, for example, and I can, you know, by default it's a banana, and then I can go in and I can pick out something a bit more interesting. So I've got some loops here, which one of our guys made at work. So these are just like kind of simple loops. And you can kind of really easily composite these loops together. So if I go in and then choose this diamond, I can go in there and add that in. And then I can kind of multiply them together. And this is sort of your, you know, traditional VJ stuff. Or I can multiply them, or I can then just put a switch in and switch between them. This is all very interesting, but to be honest, this is not, we can do this stuff in Resolume or in, you know, VDMX or whatever. So this is not actually the interesting side of TouchDesigner. What is interesting is creating generative content, so creating visuals from, you know, from nothing basically, just kind of going in and VJing, just creating things and kind of seeing where you end up. So I'm going to do that by, first of all, TouchDesigner has a full 3D pipeline, so you can create 3D objects. So someone's trying to escape that. I can lay down a 3D pipeline here, and you can kind of create, so you then have these sort of 3D objects. You have a camera, a geometry, and a light, kind of classic 3D setup. And then that goes into what's called a texture. And if I turn on the render flag for that, then you can see that there's just a torus here. It's pretty boring. There's not much going on. So what I could do is I could make this torus audio reactive. So I can go in, and now I have a 3D object here. If I actually look around it, sorry for the tearing. If there's a tearing on there, it's just the projector thing. So there's, you know, you can see the torus, and I could say apply noise to this torus, and then maybe I could go for that sort of low poly look by, oh, not by filing, by faceting. So it's all just, you know, simple connections to make these kind of, every step is a connection basically. So at the moment I have this, I've made it have unique points, and it computes normals and does all this, you know, 3D stuff. And eventually you get this kind of low poly, and you can see the noise is kind of, you know, moving around there. And then when I come out, oh, if I turn my render flag on, when I come out of there, you can see that that's now an object. And this checkerboard is just transparency, so it's basically on black. In fact, if I go into my preferences, I can just quickly change that to kind of avoid confusion. I can change that to black. Apply, accept. So now we have this kind of torus, and we can start making it audio reactive. And that's very simple. So TouchDesigner has, so this is the 3D section, which is called stops. And it also has this other section here called chops. And chops are they're channel operators. So if anyone's done like sampling in Ableton and so on, basically chops are like, it's like sampling. So, but you can do it with live data. So if I bring in, if I just drag in an audio file, so I'm just going to drag in this audio file, and you can hear that playing in the background. It's kind of linked it to this audio out. So from here I can then say analyze that audio to do something. So I could say take the maximum value from this sample range, and then you get this sort of level coming through. And then if I want to say, if I think that's a bit too sort of flickery, I can filter that down. And this is all just using, you know, the operators which affect channels. But the clever part is that now I have, this is essentially an animation channel. So I can say, okay, so now I have this animation channel, I want to apply it to something. So I can now apply that to the amplitude of the noise. And it moves, but not by much, because it's just going from a small value to another small value. So I can then say, well, my audio's not loud enough, so I can boost that up by just kind of laying in another sort of operator. And you can see here that now it's coming in quite nicely and reacting to audio. And so that's the simplest kind of example of a 3D object. I can move my camera around, I can rotate my geometry, and just kind of show you guys, you know, where the middle of the torus is and it wants to show up. So that's
it's all in the geometry operator that did the faceting. You got the 3-dimensional controls
yeah,
as well.
Yeah, so we have, actually I'll explain quickly as well. Let me just turn my audio off. I'll explain quickly. So we have tops or texture operators, so that's like movies. So movies and rendering are in tops. Chops are channel operators, they're like things for animating these different parameters. So you can animate any parameter you want. Stops are surface operators, they're like kind of 3D objects, and they live within this component here called geometry. If you double click, you can go inside, and you can start playing around with them. And then we have a couple of others which are mats, which are just materials. So if I apply materials to the geometry, then I have a sort of basic setup. If I give it a color, and then hit play, now it's got that color, I can give it specular highlights. And because I've made a light in there, the light will now sort of reflect whatever's going on there. So those are the main sort of 4 families, and then there's DATs and comps, which are a bit more complicated, so I'll not really talk about them right now. But yeah, so that basically, this is a render pipeline, so you have a camera, geometry, light, and a render. And the render is just, all that's doing is basically turning what we have into a movie, essentially. And if I wanted to, I could actually, without using a circle, I could actually lay down a movie file out, and I could actually record out what I'm creating here. And you can see if I middle click, it's got a resolution, so it's 1280 by 720. And if I can go into my parameters and then change that around. So each operator has a different set of parameters here at the top right. So right now I have this facet moving around, and that's kind of cool, but the main focus on Touch is also the fact that it does everything on the GPU, so it's quite fast and efficient. So if I wanted to, I could say, let's take, in fact, let me just turn my audio volume out down. Cool, so that's now just running in the background. If I wanted to say do something like a traditional VJ trick would be a feedback loop. So if I wanted to create a feedback loop, I can now do that. Once it's rendered out into a movie, I can then do that just by right-clicking onto it and putting it over itself and using something called a feedback top. And then that starts painting on the screen what is, what I'm creating. And then in this loop, I can start creating sort of creative things like first of all, I can stop it from just painting solid color and give it a bit of opacity there. And it will fade off over time. And I can then sort of do traditional transforming. So imagine in Photoshop we want to move something to the right, then we can use this transform to kind of move something in, to the right. But because it's in a feedback loop, it's going to just print that image over and over and over again. So it's kind of a really simple system for kind of, well, I say simple, it's probably quite complicated, but once you get your head around how these things work and how chops, I mean, it's basically, it is quite a simple system compared to, for example, programming this from scratch in processing or something like that. You know, it is quite a simple solution to a very, you know, sort of complicated problem. So if I go and just turn my volume down more. So if I go and just kind of delete this out, because that's kind of a quick, really quick overview as to what things are. People are probably thinking, well, I don't get it, which is fair enough. So I'll start from like a kind of more basic example now. That was just kind of explain what you can do. You can kind of really quickly get things together. So for example, if I bring a movie file in, so this movie is now a texture in TouchDesigner terms. It's a top, which is a texture top. And then if I hit plus here on the parameters, you can just choose a file. So I can choose actually inside TouchDesigner itself, and the TouchDesigner folder, there is a lovely sample of a butterfly, which I want to use. So the butterflies, you know, it's a static image, it's not very exciting, but this is just kind of to get your head around how the very, very, very basics of what this software does. So that butterfly is staying there, and then what I want to do is I want to animate it somehow. And when you want to animate, you always use chops generally. And chops are just, yeah, like I said before, you know, they have samples. So if I create a beat, so a beat is just going to count up, you know, like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, it's 120 BPM right now. And if I make it not locked to the timeline, it's just going to keep going like that. If I change it to 4. If I change it to 1, it's going to be like a sort of like a drum beat, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. You know, you can change how your sort of BPM works. And then what I'm going to do is actually to say, rather than outputting a ramp, I can output a sine wave on that sort of, on that same beat. And this channel is basically just saying, you know, every frame it's kind of just moving up and down, it's just following the sine waves pattern. And what I can do then is say, this currently goes from -1 to 1. So if I want to go from 0 to 1, then I need to somehow change that value range. So I can do that by just plugging that into another node here, which is called a math. And then I can say from range, on the range tab, -1 to 1 to 0 to 1, and then now it'll go from 0 to 1. And then in basic compositing terms, if I was in Photoshop, what I would do is I would kind of transform it 100% to 0%, 100% again, if I want the wings to kind of flap in the most basic way. So what I can do is transform, and then say, drag, I basically can click this button here, and then it allows me to drag this parameter, this channel to any parameter I want. So I can say, well, this transform has a scale parameter, and if I move it manually, you can see it's going to kind of flap the wings. So if I take a sine wave, and then make it flap, then now we're going to have a very basic animation. So that's the fundamental kind of, you know, system behind it, is these kind of channels which drive, they're live channels, they're real-time pieces of data, and that beat doesn't have to be a beat. It can be audio device in, it can be Connect skeleton or something like that. Like it can be the keyboards. You can bring all sorts of an Xbox controller. You can bring all these different devices in and just control these really, you know. This is a very simple example, the simplest of simple examples, I guess, but you can control quite a lot with it. And so with that, you kind of end up with a situation where you can create these really like interesting visuals. So if I close out and just show you guys, so these were all built just today while I was at work, but don't tell the projection artworks not that.
We're live streaming.
Oh, are you? Oh no, well, my boss will not be listening. I don't think he'll be on. P45 is what I'll do. So if I go into, what did I make today? I made these. So if I go into this particles example, just open that up. I can kind of show you guys something a bit more interesting, like what you'd actually be able to build with this. So it takes a while to load because it's...
I may have asked this before, does it speak open sound control over a network?
Yes, it does. Yeah. OSC, you can just use a chop, OSC in. Oh, OSC in is there, and OSC out as well. So if I send OSC out, and I plug a constant, like or a beat into that, a beat, At the moment, it's going over local host on port 10,000, so that means it comes directly back in, and it comes in as a OSC. And I use it quite a lot with Unity and just kind of other programs like TouchOSC. You can just hook up really easily. But this is sort of a really sort of simple particle example. And this is all it is a particle SOP, and I'm controlling that with all these different sort of parameters here that I've created. And I can turn, my background's pretty horrible. I can turn these things on and off. I can change the noise period. I can change the roughness. And more interestingly, I can change the particle kind of birth rate and things. So I can make the particles die off. I can make them recreate themselves. And it's also audio reactive, but because I don't have anything plugged in, I'm going to have to create something. So if I just take out that, this might crash because there's actually a bug. So it can be a little buggy sometimes. Audio file in, and then just use that and send it to, where's Mono? I don't know what it is in that. So that will now actually react to the audio. And I can build these kind of control panels to control how the audio works. In fact, if I just turn it on. Yes, this is the default sound, basically, the default music. And then I can analyze the audio. I've built this component to analyze, what's going on. I can change the thresholds. This is the actual beat coming in. And I've got this kind of spectrum here as well. And as I change, you can hear not the actual audio, but rather what's going into TouchDesigner. So this is the mids, this is the highs, and this is the lows. So this is just for processing those kind of audio channels. And then if I come back out, top level, then I can kind of change, the amplitude, for example. I can kind of ramp that up a bit, and I can ramp up some of the, where is this? I can't even find my own parameters now. I could ramp up the feedback, for example. That's just going to paint. It's just going to paint whatever I've created, and then I can. Where is my audio amplitude? I might have deleted it. So I can then bring up the volume by going into here actually, because I've got this master volume which controls how loud the audio is. And if I want to ramp that up even more, I can just do what I did before, put a math in. You can kind of just really quickly put things in the middle of your network to kind of create these. I can actually zoom in on this if I want to as well, just by clicking. But yeah, it's kind of just sort of moving in time to the music. And there's another, so that's like kind of really simple particles. You can kind of create particles in it. You can also, this is just a spectrum. So it's just an audio spectrum that comes in, and it's gonna basically then instance some cues along it and kind of create something a bit more interesting once it opens up. So this is my 3D spectrum. Let me just plug in. First of all, let me turn on the output, which I think is me. Okay, so that's the same sound again, basically. And actually, if I turn off this and then plug in something else a bit more interesting, I can kind of show you guys really quickly. I'm just going to put that song. So that's now going to, if I just set audio device out, so now we can hear some audio, and then I can kind of go in and show you guys. So this is the actual 3D spectrum. I'm just going to kind of make it half sweep, and I can kind of move around that with my mouse and zoom in and out. It's all in real time. So this is just a very simple sort of. It's a line basically, which then I apply the spectrum to, and that creates this kind of spectrum sort of an analyzer. And it's got some particles that it's firing out as well. And again, it's got all these different kind of sort of parameters. So I can change the turbulence, I can change the colour. So if I set red, for example, and now I've got this kind of red audio reactive sort of waveform. And then I can bring up the turbulence, I can, make it go crazy. I can turn off the particles completely and just have like a sort of a waveform. I can tile it so it's now a bit more like a sort of traditional waveform. And you can kind of just make the boxes bigger, so it's just really quite quick to move these things around and just kind of change your entire visuals wherever you need to change it to. I can turn my background on and off. I can actually bring the amplitude right down, so now it's not doing anything except moving the camera in and out. And then, because I have all this audio analysis, I can kind of choose which sections of the audio. The spectrum is currently at low volume. If I bring it up, I can start to move it around. And then if I come out, I can then change my amplitude back up again. And now I've got this kind of really crazy sort of waveform with the box coming out. Now it looks more like particles. So you can kind of really quickly just start changing things around and just sort of playing. And this is just playing with the mouse on the viewer, so I can kind of move in and really, you know, get in there amongst what's going on. So if I bring that, I have to bring the particles back on, then bring the tile back on. So you can kind of, you know, create really quick visuals and kind of get this sort of rapport going on. So that's kind of the basics. It was a very quick introduction, to be honest, but that was kind of the basics of what TouchDesigner can do. So it's more about you can build Resolute in TouchDesigner if you wanted to. You could build D3 in TouchDesigner if you really wanted to, but there's a reason that Resolute and D3 exist. You use them. So what it's quite good for is you can plug it straight into things like Resolute or VMX. If anything uses, actually VMX is Mac only, is it? Or is that? Yeah. Yeah, maybe not that one then. But you can spout out into other programs, and spout's as simple as you literally just have. If I've got a movie, I can say, okay, I want to send this out to Resolute. And I can do spout out, and I give it a name, and then it just goes out to whatever program I've got running. So that was probably the quickest introduction to TouchDesigner I've ever done, because apparently I'm out of time. So yeah, I've had to kind of rush through there, but if anyone has any questions or anything, feel free to come and ask me.
One very brief one.
Yeah.
Maybe you on a personal level, but also projection artworks. Why TouchDesigner and not Composer or Jitter or something? What is it that to you made it worth?
That's probably a better question for Kumper, who's hanging around at the back there. Because he's
Yeah.
the one who set us down the path of using TouchDesigner, and that's how I got hired. So he's probably a better person to ask. But yeah, we basically, TouchDesigner, it's so fast to develop stuff in, so fast. I mean, I use Unity as well, and I use, I have looked into things, I don't use them so much, but I have looked into things like open frameworks, processing, you know, the programming sort of side of things, and they are good for some things, but TouchDesigner is just so powerful. You can do your GLSL stuff. You've got C++ kind of integration there as well, so you can kind of code with.
But the trade-off is Windows only.
I wouldn't call that a trade-off, but yeah.
It is Windows only.
It is Windows only, yeah. Yeah, I don't think they're going to make a Mac version ever. So, well, I say right now, but basically, I think they have some driver issues, and I don't think they're going to do that kind of thing. So, yeah, if this is sort of, you know, it's quick, it's fast to use, it's powerful, but the only problem it has, the only downfall, and if I was going to say downfalls, would be that it doesn't have a physics engine, which is kind of a little bit disappointing because. It's a little bit disappointing because if it had a physics engine, then it means that, you know, we could do quite a lot of nice sort of. And we actually, for this Nissan, that car job we did, we actually kind of built our own really terrible physics engine for that. It's basically just steering and moving on it. We had to keep everything on a flat plane because it was kind of. Whereas if you do use Unity or something, you can obviously bring in the dynamics and stuff. So, but other than that, it's pretty much my perfect tool. So, except for that's on Windows, as you say. So, but you can run it on Mac if you have Boot Camp. So it will run, but on I think it'll run on AMD Macs now as well. It used to run only on NVIDIA. It will run AMD. But yeah, anyway, my time's up, so I'll let whoever's next go on. Oh yeah, that's a point as well. Yeah, that is a point as well. There is, if anyone's looking into TouchDesigner and wants to learn things, there's a TouchDesigner help group, and there is a Slack, if anybody knows what Slack is. There is a Slack chat room, but to be honest, that's pretty dead now. So TouchDesigner Health Group, and also the derivative forums. There's loads of people there, mainly guys from America who are really helpful. So yeah, check that out if you want to learn it, basically, or give me a shout. It's fine.
Thanks.
Cool.
Thanks so much.
Should I pull my laptop out for you guys? Sorry about this.
We'll be back the next speech, actually performance, in 15 minutes.
Even the guys who use the Square
I really want to get into TouchDesigner. That's it. I'm definitely going to change at some point. I've got a version of it.
It's nice to use it with
Oh yeah.
the first one. I used it for that.
So it works alright in there.
Yeah, it's you have to back in.
I chug on the graphics. Now that's a great trick. Oh, that's really nice. Yeah, I was just really like
It's all for the walls, just chuck it on and use it. Alright. Put my stuff so you've got more room.
Hey Laurie, whereabouts is the audio chat? Oh, there.
So the next performance will be in 10 minutes. And then we will have another talk and then another performance. It's a live stream. For viewers.
I don't need to. Yeah, I can like wait a bit. I'll just leave it. One thing I was going to try actually. One thing I was going to try. Yeah, what's it about light? Always need light. Yeah. Okay, yeah. Actually, I might just get like that.
I'm gonna go for a cigarette.
Almost, yeah. Yep, on the telephone upstairs.
Alright, this globe should glow on the light.
Yeah. Oh, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
Okay, then you get the people down.
Yeah.
So 2 minutes.
Alright, cool.
Cheers, Jeff.
Hello. So yeah, I'm Neil Coughlin. I'm a designer and director, and I set up Studio Aszyk about 3.5 years ago with the intention of doing a lot more like music videos and music visuals. And tonight I'm going to try and show like a couple of sets I've been working on over the past few years. One of them I performed recently at Live Fest in Moscow a couple of weeks ago. And another one is just a bit of a collection of things which I've been working on previously, all around the theme of bird mask visuals, which kind of explains this kind of thing as the theme. So fingers crossed that my laptop doesn't crash or any shit like that. But yeah, sweet. I'm gonna give it a go.
When's that finished? Thank you very much, Studio As Is. Neil Coop. Is that on? Is it on now? Hello. Studio As Is. Neil Coogan? Coghlan. Thank you very much. Amazing set. Does anybody have any questions or anything to speak about with it?
What were the visuals made in?
Cinema 4D.
Oh, badass. All right.
Yeah. Any more?
I like the hat.
I love the hat.
Audio and visual.
I love the hat.
Yeah, try and do audio and visuals. First part was a bit sketchy, but
So yeah, I guess the first half of it was a bit more trying to do all the live stuff straight into Push. It was a bit kind of sketchier because it was a lot more unprepared, whereas the second half, which looked, I guess, a lot more, kind of flowed a lot better. That was I guess like a pre-prepared kind of AV set, so I can still switch between like different like tracks and decks and stuff. But it kind of flows a lot better than the original one, which still needs a lot of work. It's very much a work in progress at the moment, but I guess this is what's about, just like kind of testing it out and just seeing how it goes and stuff. So hopefully I'll be back at some point with something bigger and better and like much more kind of cohesive. Well, thank you.
Well, thank you very much for coming, everybody. It's the busiest Vjlondon event we've ever had. If you need more space, there's room at the front to sit on the floor for the next act, which will be in about 10 minutes' time. We have, as a small organisation, just built a new website, which is going to be coming online in the next couple of weeks, when we've added a lot more content we've been collecting for the last 3 years, and a bit of pre-history before that, built by our wonderful graphics titan, Pete Elastic Eye. And we've got a couple of examples coming up here for you just to have a little look at. Pete has spent £40 of his own money on a WordPress. We're going to pass the hat round. I'm going to come round and take your money. We need at least £40. This is the best hat in the house. That's the one I chose. I'm coming round with that. I want £1 off each of you. Only £1 for the last 3 years' work from everybody that's contributed to publicise all of the artists. We've had over 100 artists perform down here for nothing. Not even their expenses, not even a bus fare. They've had a beer each. And it's taken a little bit of organising, just a little bit. Just, a couple of us saying, come and play, mate. So if you appreciate us and what we can take this to, we have got a launch event for the website on the 5th of November, which will be a December, 5th of December. New River Studios. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that's the plan at the moment. So we'll be making some amazing installations. There'll be some amazing audio-visual shows. Maybe as good as tonight. Maybe, just maybe. So, get your quids out. I'm coming. Thank you very much. The next,
artist we have tonight is Zak Norman, who made all the visual. Well, no, he didn't make it all, but he coordinated and created the show for Squarepusher, amongst many other amazing musicians. So go and get a drink. Not yet. I want your money first. If you've got to rush for a piss, come back and give me your money. And Manuel wants to say something.
And to whoever hasn't given us their email address to spam them to death, yeah, and wants to be spammed to death, just come over and we'll get your email address for them on the list. Thank you.
It's my hat.
Yeah, first one from the hut.
It's my fucking hat as well. Make my head smell like money later.
So we will be back in 10 minutes. The streaming will continue. Thank you for watching. We got 10 viewers now. It's amazing.
One of the tracks was. Yeah. The others are like friends and like people I ask for like usage and stuff. Yeah, I don't have it myself, but like the place that I was
The focus will get better when we start.
No, I'm not.
And I just need HDMI and sound. Yes, HDMI.
really work. That's like out front. But the second half. Would have been nice if one of us. Yeah. Oh yeah.
But I am absolutely rubbish with all the computers and stuff.
Not even pretty pictures anymore. It becomes like really technical.
But babes, do you know, for example, the photographers, right? What software are they using? Only Photoshop photographers? Or there is some more?
No, it's pretty much Photoshop. What, to like retouch and fix up retouch.
They usually use something, right? They don't just make pictures and just...
No, they take a photo, yeah, then
They usually use a software, right? To like...
They'll do the levels.
Yeah. So it's Photoshop. Is there anything else?
Mainly that.
And you need a really a strong computer, like PC with a good memory to use
Not for
it?
Photoshop. For the stuff like this.
Yeah, but for the Photoshop.
Yeah, no. I can get Photoshop at home if you want. You can get Photoshop at home.
So for example, to just like do some pictures, not like extremely nice, but like to use Photoshop, do you need really expensive PC or not?
You can do it on mine.
Can I do it on mine?
Probably on your laptop, yeah. But your laptop's really slow.
My laptop is
It's fine. You probably can't.
But it's
What do you want to do? Take photos? Yeah. Weddings?
Are you crazy, man?
A little bit.
Do you have a camera?
No. I got it for fun. But that's the problem. You actually need a really good camera. Because Photoshop can only enhance things that are like, you know what I mean? You need to have all the levels.
Yeah, thank you for having me now.
But you can buy a good camera for like 400 used.
Good camera.
Not like professional, but like half.
Do you know what? Like a camera, it's mainly the lenses that are really expensive. Like if you want good lenses. Like the camera thing itself, 5D is probably like 800. It's fucking... Well, it does video as well. You can film it and you can take it. It's really good. And then like lenses can be like £1,000, £2,000. Just depends what you want to shoot. Photography, I mean, it's like
Guys, want drinks?
No, it's okay.
grab you one.
Oh, no, it's up like yeah, I'll come like that. John, that's the Sally over here as well.
Oh, right. Is this for the what? Which Simon?
I know Sally. Friend Sally.
Vaguely, right? Yeah, vaguely. Well, we actually not just meet up that long. We just meet in May till like 10 o'clock.
Oh, yeah.
So we just look at like some line.
Yeah, alright, I'll come down like next Saturday.
Just a lot. They literally like just filming us having this conversation.
Really?
No, it's not. You're actually on the
Okay, we're gonna start. Zak Norman is gonna present his work. Something, yeah.
Hello.
Please.
Hi everyone, my name's Zak. I, to be honest, never ever thought I was ever going to do anything visual or be a VJ. It was never something I wanted to be, but it just so happened that by course of accident I took a job and years later ended up in this world. So look at a slideshow on whilst I talk to make it slightly less boring. If I yawn uncontrollably, it's because we're in the middle of a tour, not because I'm bored, and sleep is really precious and not very often. I wanted to start just by talking about working with electronic music and musicians in general, because I kind of feel that there's quite a weird disconnect that kind of happens where everyone kind of feels that a lot of artists cop out by having the spacebar show, and everyone's seen it. I'm going to press spacebar and I'm going to mime through the show, and people get caught out and they get a lot of stick for it. And just to sort of defend them slightly, a lot of the time these people don't want to be doing this. They don't want to be going on stage and not doing anything. It's, from my experience, a combination of their management and the production company they're working with who coerce them in these ways so their show can be perfect. So every frame is exactly where it should be every night, and that you get these perfect shows that are exactly the same. And I kind of feel that a lot of it comes from the fact that people don't make concessions for the way an artist wants to perform. Whereas I came from a music background, I studied music and play lots of instruments, and I kind of feel like when you're doing a show visually for an artist, it's not about you and your visuals. That's not why people are going to the concert. They're not going to see your work. They're going to see the musician. And everything that you do needs to augment what is going on in their world. If you just put something on and leave it there, it just becomes wallpaper and can actually detract from what an artist is doing, I feel. And I think that a lot of that comes from people being afraid of how musicians do stuff live and just wanting to find a way of making it work. So there's actually quite a lot of things you could do. A lot of people tonight have done a lot of audio reactive stuff, but you can, if in my world, what I want to be able to do is create a show around the way an artist wants to play music. Not say, okay, well you have to play this at the exact same tempo that you did last night, because otherwise none of your video is going to work, none of your lights are going to be in time. I don't want to ever have to restrict my artists in the way they work. I don't want to have to stop the way they want to play and make it a less enjoyable experience for them. Because, you know, for lots of reasons, one of which, on a more cynical level, if they still enjoy it, they'll keep touring and you'll keep getting work. And working with Squarepusher especially has been great for that, because he, obviously, as many of you will know, doesn't compromise ever on anything that he does. So, in designing a system for him, the goal was trying to find a way that he could replicate what he was doing live and feel that visually it was augmenting what was going on. And so what we decided to do, and it's not something I'd ever done before, was work in Chords Composer and build a purely generative show that would react in terms of audio and MIDI feeds that would come in and change as he changed his audio. Everything, I don't know what he's going to do every night, and that for me is really interesting because it keeps the show at a more organic level. What we've done with the show, which is relatively unique, is I'm a control freak like anyone who does video. I will plan every single frame, and I actually consider that a bit of a weakness, because I think that when you strive for perfection on that level, you sort of don't make space for happy accidents. So what we've done with the show is it responds to data, and the data choose different presets within Chords Composer, mainly VDMX, which is what I use to house everything, which will change how the content grows, what effects layers are put on top of it, which are then changed by the audio that comes through, and how they work over the two screens. And the data I use is really rudimental. I actually find out the longitude and the latitude of everywhere we go, the temperature on the day it's going to be, the humidity and the population, and a bunch of things like that. And I put it into this little Max MSP app we built, which is just essentially a MIDI patch bay that takes information and it analyzes that information against all the information it has stored from all the other places we've been on the tour. So it's a constantly growing database of information. And that way, the combinations of what it can do are vast, because there's different presets within every plugin, and within every effects chain, and within every output signal. So I'll be honest with you, I don't know what it's going to do most of the time, which was probably the most terrifying experience for me starting off, just to not know how this thing was going to perform or what it was going to do. But it surprises me every day, which is quite exciting. We just did a show in Riga, in Latvia on the weekend, and we've never played somewhere quite in that part of the world. So I knew the results were going to be really different, but it was a totally different show. It really freaked me out. I didn't even know that it could do some of the things that it was doing. And the reason that we did that was not because we wanted it to be something that we necessarily talked about so people would know about it and know how sort of it worked, but just as a way for ourselves of creating a different performance every night. Like, for example, we're playing in London in a couple of weeks. That will look totally different to the last time we played in London, simply because there's more information now for it to read off, because we've done a whole year's worth of touring. So what we've done is tried to create something that sort of has a life of its own. And what I like about it most, actually, is when he makes mistakes, actually. That's the funnest part for me, because it's so organic in the way that it works that it will go with him. If he sort of does one of those mad things that he does, which completely crush the audio and create mad nonsense and then silence, it will die, and then you'll hear him trying to get his plugin working again, and it will jump with it, and it feels like something that is alive, and it feels like it actually works with the way he wants to play his music, as opposed to it being about the visuals or about the music. It's supposed to be an organic experience that works together. So we use a bunch of different fixtures. For most of this tour, we've been using these two screens. I'll come back to these later. These are the patches that we've created. Every track is basically a different patch that loads, and inside that patch there are multiple different presets and multiple channels that are affected by audio and MIDI. We use 5 channels of audio now and 16 channels of MIDI. And it's a mindfuck. I have an Excel document that explains what it does, so even I don't even understand it anymore. What's quite interesting about it is that we worked really hard. I worked with 2 guys in the States, so one of them I've still never met, but I feel like I know him very well. But we wanted to create something that had maximum flexibility. So we had something that they would give me a raw patch, and I would sequence it to Tom's music. So there's probably about, I reckon, around 15,000 video cues in the show, something like that. It beat my record, which was about 8,000, which I did in some focus. That's quite impressive. But what they basically do is trigger events. Now what those events are will differ depending on what plugin is loaded and what presets are set to it, which means that it will at certain points evolve. And the idea is that as the track progresses, we can get as much out of what is essentially just one Chords Composer plugin a song, but actually develop quite a lot of flexibility with how we run it and what it does. This is the small little gubbin which does the data stuff. And how it actually works is pretty simple. I have a trigger. Every track that triggers will send a MIDI note out of the software which triggers this, and then this will send MIDI notes back into BDMX, which will then trigger presets. It's relatively simple. I built it on the plane, so it was kind of turning up in Japan and hoping it worked, which luckily it did. This is one of the plugins for the show. I mean, it's relatively straightforward in how it runs now. If I have a good show, I shouldn't have to touch it. If everything kind of is running happily, it's a beast. I've never felt a computer get quite as warm as this one when it runs this show. But it sort of has taken over sort of a couple of months of touring that we did to kind of really smooth out all the stuff that goes on, and that's kind of the reality of touring. As much as you set yourself enough time and think that it's going to be ready, you never have enough time, and it's never ready, and it always does the exact opposite of what we wanted to do on the first show. The biggest challenge actually was with this show is that they didn't want to use, we had to get everything on a plane, which isn't easy when you're used to sort of having racks and racks of gear that are constantly plugged in. So I actually toured with 2 6U SKB racks, and everything that's in them has been designed around weight distribution, not as in what is useful for this to be next to this. So everything has to be totally unplugged and replugged every day, which is joyous fun, as you can imagine. But it's nice to have restrictions like that sometimes, because it shows you the kind of things that you can do. It kind of, in a way, when you're starting something and you have this whole ocean in front of you, you're trying to decide what programs to use and what you should do, sometimes restrictions can be really helpful, because actually they define certain aspects for you and say, okay, well, you have to use this computer because it's the only one that will get on hand luggage, and all of these things actually do add up to kind of helping you build stuff. These are screenshots of different plugins for the show in different states of repair and disrepair. This one's actually quite funny because they have this text generator that kind of runs through a bunch of the tracks. I'm not sure how many people know this, but it's actually got everyone's name who worked on the show as kind of somewhere in this text document. Which is, yeah, which I always find quite funny when people take pictures of it, and I was kind of interested in what words it called. And I'll try and show you a bit of it in action. It doesn't really like this computer, but we'll see how it goes. I want to try and show you the kind of differences you get when you put different data in, but we'll see how successful we are. Does anyone have any questions whilst I fiddle around with this?
What computer do you actually run it on?
I run it on a Mac Pro, and the reason for that originally, that was chosen before I chose what software I was going to use or what operating system, simply because I knew it was going to be a really heavy show, and I knew I was going to have to get it as handy.
A big old Mac Pro.
No, it's the iBin. You know. Yeah. No one hates it, it's just me, don't worry. But it has proven successful in being able to run the show, which, to be fair, I was relatively doubtful. I mean, I spent a lot of time talking with David at VDMX and a bunch of other people about whether we thought it was going to do it. because it's a pretty expensive mistake to make in buying it. And
do you know what the overall resolution between, how many projectors is it?
We use, coming out of the main machine is 3 or 4. No, I haven't looked in the back for a very long time. We have the 2 main screens and the body projector and the GUI. So there's 4 coming out of it. The main screens are 1080, the body is 1024/768. So it's a little bit less. Anything else?
How much of live interaction you had during the show?
I can't do anything. It will override me. I can't. We had, like, the funniest thing is that Tom asked me a couple of months ago whether we could add lighting control in. I knew it was possible, so I kind of said yes. And he said, "Great, can we have it for next Tuesday?" And yeah, fine. So you know, I went to a lighting warehouse and they taught me how a strobe light works. Cool. And got a little box, and I mean, I basically had to set it up again on a plane, which seems to be where I do all my work, but had to create another MIDI channel to send DMX out of VDMX to control the strobes. But what I hadn't actually anticipated is that I only had one more free channel of MIDI, and I thought it was free. Actually, I'd used it and forgotten about it. So what happened was I got to this show, having never tested this thing, and just straight into it. I think it was in Belgium or somewhere. And it just, I don't know what happened, but this program has a habit of trying to fuck me. That's what it does. And the whole show generally sometimes is about me trying to fight it to do what it's supposed to do. And I can't control it because there's so much MIDI that comes in. And the minute you try and remap something, it's sent 300 commands and it's remapped them to all these other things. So in this particular show, in trying to get the strobes working, it decided that it was going to strobe the outputs between each other and put the mask that runs the connect onto the back wall, and it's every track it decided to do something different. It looked great. I thought it was actually one of our best shows, but it was...
It's the problems we have. So it's 15,000 trigger, like